Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Buck Roll. Alright, we're getting close to September now, and what September means is that we're getting close to Halloween. Halloween has always been one of my favorite holidays, and before I left California and moved to Texas, I used to have one of the best decorated Halloween houses for Halloween every year. I had kids that came to my house year after year, and I still have a lot of those props, but I've kind of gotten my Halloween spirit addressed by going to the Silo of Screams attraction. I've done that for the last couple of years, but last year the combination of the long hours at Silo of Screams and the long hours at work became a little too much for me to do it 2 days in a row. You gotta remember, Silo of Screams works on Fridays and Saturdays of October, and it goes until, well, as they say, the last soul is consumed. But when you're getting up at 5 a.m., going to work for 12 and a half hours, then going to Silo of Screams, working for another 8 hours, taking a couple hours of sleep, and then starting the whole thing over again, it catches up to you. And last year I ended up making myself sick doing it. So at the end of the season last year, I told John that I would be back this year, but I was only going to be able to work 1 day a week because the 2 days weren't going to work, so I was only going to be able to work on Saturdays. John said that's cool. He's got a lot of people that do kind of the same thing, so wasn't terribly upset about that, and he understood my reasons. But one of the things I decided at the same time was that I think I want to do Halloween night itself at my house this year. As I said before, I had a big decorations at my house for Halloween every year, and got people come every year. I'd like to try and start doing that again this year. So I'm going to probably take Halloween off from Silo of Screams this year and do my own thing. That means I got to pull out some of the decorations that I've had for many years that came with me from California. Some of them didn't really survive the trip or were damaged, and I need to open these things up, look at them, see if they still work, and do what I have to do to get the ones that are savable saved so we can use them this year. And it starts with this guy right here. My friend here is made out of PVC, a lot of newspaper, a lot of packing tape, and some old clothes, and then a creepy head, and a couple of hands, one of which came off, and so this guy definitely needs a hand. So we're gonna have to work on that. I'd also like to maybe make him a little proportional to a normal person. Right now his legs are hanging way out of the bottom. I'd like to maybe shorten his legs a little bit, make him look a little bit normal, because he's got kind of a lurch quality to him. Now this guy here used to have a set of gallows. In fact, I still got the gallows. They're right here. This is the gallows piece right here, and the rope went around this, and he hung from that. I don't think I'm going to have to use this thing this year because I got a lot of really great old trees in the backyard, or in the front yard, and those will work just as well, and it'll be maybe even a little more creepy, because it'll look like maybe it was something that was unsanctioned, as opposed to, oh yeah, well he was at something that actually looked like a gallows, maybe he deserved it, or something. But anyway, this guy needs, like I said, he needs a lot of work, and first thing I gotta do, I guess, is get these clothes off of him and see what's going on in there. It's funny, it's been a while since I've had this guy apart, and I forgot that I had to actually make him suspenders. Now, as I said a little earlier, one of the things I want to do is try and get him a little bit more proportional. I always thought his legs and his torso seemed really long for the head size, and he seemed freakishly out of proportion. So what I've actually done is suspended him off the ground at roughly the same height as I am, and then I'm going to try and use my body proportions to shorten up his legs a little bit. And clearly I think that's what the problem is. The legs are clearly way too long here, and so that's where we're gonna have to start, is shortening those up, because those feet need to be sitting flat on the ground, and they clearly are not. Plus the fact there was a lot of damage done to the knees anyway, so it's a good time to take this thing apart and get him looking better. Alright, I've spent a little bit of time on this guy right now. I've got him pretty much cleaned up. As I said before, I kind of rehung him at a level that wasn't as close to the ceiling, because I wanted to kind of make it so he and I were of the same proportions. So he's about the same height as I am, and goes down to the ground all the way. You can see the shoulders are about the same height, so that's good. I've removed the legs beneath the knee and kind of cleaned them up here. You can kind of see a little bit now how I got this thing built. It's basically, he actually has somewhat of a skeletal structure made out of PVC pipe. And then I wrapped newspaper around it and taped that all together to kind of get it all evened out. And basically what I want to do is basically set it up so that the leg and the thigh kind of are at the same level, so the foot is sitting on the ground, and that way he'll be proportioned right to actually look a little bit more normal. And a lot of the problem here is, this guy was put together with packing tape and duct tape and all this kind of stuff, and over years that just kind of got a little bit, the tape sometimes loses its stickiness over time, and the constant flexing at the joints here where the knee would be just kind of tore the paper that was kind of the basis of his knee. You see, I want the knee to be able to flex like a normal human would, and so I didn't want to just run a piece of PVC all the way through the leg, because I wanted it to be able to move. And it was kind of the same with the arms too. You can actually see that there's a flex point at the elbow, and for the most part, like I said, he's mostly just newspaper and packing tape. But it's actually kind of cool. He actually has a neck bone and shoulder bones, and then this thing just goes all the way through it. And in fact, the piece of cable that's connecting him to the actual thing that supports the weight is actually attached right down the inside of the head, inside and attached to the frame, so that it's really, really strong. That won't ever be a weak point. And then I can just kind of cover the whole thing up with the head, which just slides down, kind of a creepy prop I got at a Halloween store a number of years ago. He still looks pretty good, looks pretty gory, and will look great at a distance. But like I said, next thing I want to do now is reattach the legs, get them properly set in length, and then reattach that hand, and I think we'll be done with this guy. I think he'll be ready for a few more Halloweens. All right, a little bit more time has passed by. I've reattached his hand, I've reattached his legs, and honestly, I think he looks better proportioned now than he did in the past. He always seemed to be about 6 inches too tall, because while his head and his torso were about right, his legs were about 6 inches longer than they should have been. I've corrected that problem now. I think he looks more normal, and I think he's pretty much ready to go. Now, he's been wearing the same clothes for years and years and years, so I decided to run his clothes through the washing machine, give him a nice clean outfit. But I think we're just going to let him kind of hang out, pardon the pun, for a little while here until we get his clothes out of the washer, and we're going to move on to other stuff. All right, a couple more hours have passed. We got this guy's clothes all out of the wash. They look pretty good now. I gotta say, he looks 1,000% better. You gotta remember, it doesn't have to look perfect, because the truth is, at night, in the dark, hanging 10 feet, 15, 20 feet up on a tree, he just has to look decent, and I think he looks decent right now. His proportions are a lot better, and we got the hand reattached, and everything looks pretty good. I've also taken the opportunity to pull some of the other stuff out to see what I've got, because there's a few things I got that I know are probably no good anymore, because a lot of this stuff, like this guy's face, is made out of a latex plastic. And unfortunately with latex, it tends to dry out and crack a little bit. In fact, you can see some little cracks in his face already. But right now, they're pretty minor. But I had some big giant vampire bats and things like that I used to hang in my yard. And they are basically useless at this point. They've gotten so cracked that, the stuffing is coming out of them and they're not ready. But we do have a bunch of things that are still going to be ready to go. This guy still looks great. I like this guy. I used to put him on a little spinner so he'd slowly spin, because there's actually two sides. There's a normal face and then kind of a creepy face. So if it's spinning, you see one side and all of a sudden you turn around, the face has changed. So I like him. He's latex, but he's held up very well, I think in large part because I've always stored him in a plastic bag. So maybe that's the secret to some of this stuff. And then of course I've got some of my tombstones down here. They look pretty good. One of them actually got damaged quite a bit and I had to repair it, but once again, this will be on the lawn, kind of maybe shrouded in a little bit of smoke from the smoke machine. I got my little cemetery sign, which I will have to figure out how I'm going to hang that. And in the past, I hung that over the cinder block wall right next to the gate going into the backyard. Well, there is no cinder block wall here, so we'll have to figure that out. Maybe we'll put that on maybe that'll go in the mailbox or something like that. That'll look pretty cool. Couple more styrofoam tombstones. This guy's been a regular in my Halloween displays for a number of years. Another styrofoam tombstone. I've got my little skeleton dude. He'll probably sit in a chair or something like that, or we'll attach him to a tree or something like that. I always kind of attached him to a tree in the past and made it look like he was just tied to the tree and then just died there or something like that. So we can probably do something with him. I've got one of the strobe lights out. I've got a lot more strobe lights, but I'm not sure where they all are. So we're going to have to try and track those down and see if we can figure out where they are. But they aren't really terribly expensive either. You can go buy those pretty simple. I also got the black light here going. So that one looks pretty good. So I think this is most of the collection. I think I got a couple little other things over here that I haven't pulled out. This thing is like a ghoul that sits on the ground. It looks like he's clawing his way out of the ground. And he looks pretty good. He's in good shape down there. We won't pull him out today. This was like something that used to hang on the side of the house. That's like 10 feet long, and it's basically a scary ghoul that hung on the side of the house, and it had like a material that draped down, and he's starting to get a little old and a little worn too, so he may be at the end of his days. And then I got this big giant thing here that used to be this big giant cowboy ghoul thing with glowing eyes that used to hang in the front of the house, and it would go from the top of the second story all the way down to the ground. With these big drapes that hung on it, and that was pretty scary. I haven't looked at him yet. We'll try pulling him out. I'm not sure if that's going to work too well this year for this house, because this house just might not be big enough to hang him. However, he might get hung on one of the trees, and that's a possibility too. So who knows on that. Now another thing I have had, this is one of the oldest Halloween props I had. It was like about a 6 foot tall standing witch. And honestly, she's in pretty bad shape too, so we may not use her anymore. However, I do still have this guy, and this guy is really cool. He's 6.5 or 7.5 feet tall. He moves and he speaks and stuff like that, and he's relatively new, so he'll probably make his appearance again this year, because he's that kind of something. He's fun. It's one of those things that you can put up a motion sensor in front of it, and when somebody walks in front of it, it'll start moving and talking. And since he's relatively new and been kept in the box every year when I'm not using him, he should be in pretty good shape. So I think we're pretty much ready for Halloween. Now, one of the other things I got a few years ago was this Halloween projector that projects spooky images on a wall, or basically what I've always used. It came with like a little, it almost seems like a white tablecloth, a disposable tablecloth for like picnics and stuff like that. And you attach the screen to your window, and then project this on it, and it makes it look like there's a ghost in your window. And I did that for a few years, and it actually came with a bunch of like free video files that you could use, but I was never happy with the ones they had, because the Halloween videos they always had were kind of happy, friendly, smiling ghosts and smiling zombies and stuff like that. I like to have kind of a spooky feel to it. So I found a whole bunch of videos on YouTube and actually made this video myself, and it's an hour long, and it just runs a loop of all sorts of creepy imagery. This ghost woman, for instance, comes by. There's ghosts that are flying around that sometimes you'll see. It's stuff that isn't designed to necessarily be funny, but instead spooky and kind of scary. It's like, wow, how do they do that? And so, like I said, I found all this stuff on YouTube and just kind of combined it into one video, which I was able to put onto a little flash drive here. And play it off of that. So I think that's going to be a really good addition to the Halloween too. We'll have to figure out where we can do it because they have really narrow windows in the front of the house. So I don't know. We'll have to play with that a little bit. But I had kind of narrow windows in the house in California too. So I don't think that will be something that's completely undoable. So I think that's all that I have for today. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.